Tragic news: Roman Reigns mourns the loss of his childhood hero, Hulk Hogan, to cardiac arrest. This one hurts. Roman Reigns breaks silence after losing his childhood hero, Hulk Hogan, to a sudden cardiac arrest. WWE fans around the world are in shock. I end this emotional tribute. We cover the heartbreaking news of Hulk Hogan's reported passing and Roman Reigns' powerful reaction. Discover how the WWE Universe is rallying together in mourning, and what Hogan meant to Reigns throughout his career. Is this the end of an era? Watch as we break down reactions, memories, and what this means for the wrestling community moving forward. What if I told you that the very man who made wrestling larger than life is gone? It was a quiet mourning until the headlines hit, like a steel chair to the chest. Hulk Hogan, the immortal icon, the very pulse of wrestling's golden age, had passed away. Cardiac arrest. Sudden. Unforgiving. And just like that, the man who once told kids to say their prayers and eat their vitamins was no more. The silence that followed was deafening. The industry didn't just lose a legend. It lost a cornerstone, and for Roman Reigns, it was personal. Reigns, the tribal chief, the head of the table, a man defined by power and control, suddenly found himself powerless. In a world where dominance is currency, this moment, broke him. Because Hulk Hogan wasn't just a name in the Hall of Fame. He was the first roar Roman ever heard. The first larger-than-life figure to show him that men could become myths. He took to social media, silent for hours, then finally typed just 4 words: "This one hurts. Bad." No filters. No bravado. Just pain. But before the tears, before the mourning, before the world came to grips with losing Hulk Hogan, we have to understand what we truly lost. We have to go back. Back to the moment when Terry Bollea became Hulk Hogan. Back to the moment when wrestling wasn't just a sport or a spectacle, it was a revolution. It was the late 1970s when Terry Gene Bollea stepped into the squared circle, a barrel-chested bass guitarist from Tampa who looked like he was carved from granite. But wrestling had seen muscles before. What it hadn't seen was presence. He wasn't just big. He was seismic. Promoters saw it immediately. There was something in his eyes, something that said he wasn't there to be a side act. He was the main event. By the time Vince McMahon Sr. gave him his break in the World Wrestling Federation, the pieces had started to move. But it was Vince McMahon Jr. who truly saw the vision. Hulk Hogan wasn't a wrestler, he was a superhero. The kind that didn't need a cape. All he needed were red and yellow tights, a bandana, and the charisma of a freight train on fire. And then, 1984 happened. Hulkamania was born. It exploded on the national stage the night Hogan defeated the Iron Sheik at Madison Square Garden to win his first WWF championship. That roar, the eruption of the crowd, it wasn't just for a title win. It was a birth cry for a new era. Wrestling, once confined to smoky halls and late-night syndication, was now mainstream. It was pop culture. It was breakfast cereal. It was Saturday morning cartoons. It was Hulk Hogan. Kids didn't just want to watch wrestling. They wanted to be wrestlers. They flexed in mirrors. They tore their shirts. They dropped elbows on pillows. And every single one of them, including a young Joe Anoa'i, before he ever stepped into a football locker room, before he ever became Roman Reigns, was watching Hogan. The Anoa'i family, legends weren't myths, they were uncles, cousins, fathers. But even in that dynasty of wrestling royalty, Hulk Hogan stood like a colossus. He wasn't just a wrestler to Reigns. He was the wrestler. The benchmark. The standard. The dream. WrestleMania was born out of Hogan's shadow. Without him, there is no WrestleMania 3, there is no slam heard around the world when he lifted Andre the Giant and made 93,000 people scream like one voice. There's no crossover to Hollywood. No Rock. No Cena. No Reigns. Hulk Hogan was the bridge between pro wrestling and the mainstream. He was the first to break that wall, walking through it with a smile and a leg drop. But Hulkamania wasn't just about the victories or the promos. It was about hope. In the 1980s, America was uncertain. It was reeling from recessions, drug epidemics, and Cold War fears. Hulk Hogan gave people something to believe in. He wasn't just fighting Roddy Piper or King Kong Bundy. He was fighting doubt. Fighting fear. Fighting the things we couldn't put into words. When he cupped his hand to his ear, the world listened. When he pointed to the heavens before delivering his leg drop, it was as if he was reminding us there was always something bigger to fight for. So when Roman Reigns read the news, when he saw that Hulk Hogan had collapsed in his Florida home from cardiac arrest, and that despite the paramedics' efforts, he never made it out of the hospital, his world stopped, because this wasn't just another fallen hero. This was the one who made all of this possible. WWE superstars were quick to release statements. John Cena tweeted a heartbreak emoji followed by, "My hero forever." Seth Rollins called Hogan the match that lit the fuse. Even Triple H, now in the executive tower, released a statement through WWE saying, "Today, we lost the architect of modern sports entertainment." But Roman Reigns, he was silent, not because he didn't care, but because the grief was too loud to speak over. Reigns grew up in the dressing rooms of Florida Championship Wrestling. He heard the stories, the road tales, the bar fights, the laughter. Everyone had a Hogan story. About his kindness. About his loyalty. About his ego, yes. But also about his unshakable belief in the business. Hogan was flawed. Human. Controversial. But when the lights hit that ramp, he turned into a god. Roman later admitted in a backstage interview years ago that he watched Hogan's matches on repeat as a kid. Studied his timing. His pacing. Not for moves, but for presence. He owned space, Roman once said. He didn't wrestle in the ring. He lived in it. That presence, Roman took it with him when he became the tribal chief. That pacing. That psychological control. That aura. It was an echo of the red and yellow storm that came before him. Roman Reigns wasn't built in place of Hulk Hogan. He was built because of Hulk Hogan, and now that echo had gone silent, the outpouring from the WWE Universe was overwhelming. From TikTok tributes showing Hogan's most iconic entrances, to Reddit threads filled with personal memories of meeting him outside arenas. Fans remembered how he made them feel. That's what legends do. They don't just win titles. They become moments in your life. A father watching WrestleMania 3 with his son. A sick child at a Make-A-Wish event who believed, just for one day, that they had superpowers because Hulk Hogan told them they did. A generation of misfits who found their voice through Hogan's over-the-top bravado. He gave people permission to be loud, to be larger than life. He was wrestling's North Star, and now, the star had dimmed. WWE announced a week of tributes, culminating in a full episode of SmackDown dedicated to Hogan's legacy. Not just the matches, but the movement. The revolution. The birth of sports entertainment as we know it. Reigns, scheduled to appear that night, was reportedly in deep talks with Triple H about delivering a eulogy segment live, unscripted. Backstage, Reigns stood near the curtain, head bowed, arms crossed. You could see it, he wasn't in character. He wasn't the tribal chief. He was Joe. The kid who once stood in the front row of a Florida house show, watching Hogan tear his shirt in half like it was made of paper. He wasn't thinking about ratings or segments. He was thinking about a man who shaped his childhood. When the time came, Roman walked down the ramp, no music. No pyro. Just silence. He stood in the ring, eyes glassy, microphone in hand. And he said, "This one hurts. This isn't just about wrestling. This is about who we become because of who came before us. And for me, for my family, Hulk Hogan was that man. He gave us the blueprint. He gave us the dream. And even though he's gone, Hulkamania lives forever." He dropped the mic, looked up, and raised one fist to the sky. There were no chants. No catchphrases. Just standing ovation. Because the world understood. A hero had died. And in his place stood a generation he helped build, still carrying the torch, but that torch felt heavier now. As WWE transitions into a new era, one shaped by Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, Gunther, and others, the question looms over the locker room: what does it mean to be a legend now? In the age of social media, of scripted promos, of 20-minute workrate matches, can anyone ever command the crowd like Hogan did, or was he the last of his kind? Wrestling fans argue legacy endlessly. But there's one thing no one debates: without Hulk Hogan, there is no WWE as we know it. There is no Attitude Era. No Monday Night Wars. No Hall of Fame. He didn't just make wrestling popular. He made it immortal, and now, the man who once told us to train, say our prayers, and believe in ourselves, is gone, but his shadow? It's still in every arena. In every Hulk-up moment. In every comeback. Every flex. Every child who dreams of being larger than life. That's what immortality is. And that's what Hulk Hogan gave us. Roman Reigns left the ring that night with more than applause echoing in his ears. He left with a weight few understood. Because as the cameras faded to black, as the crowd slowly exited the arena, Roman didn't go straight to the locker room. He went to a quiet corner backstage, slumped against a concrete wall, and just sat there. No entourage. No trainers. Just a man grieving the loss of the myth that made him believe he could be more than just another kid with a famous last name. Behind him, a framed poster of WrestleMania 3 hung on the wall. Hogan vs. Andre. Roman stared at it like a portal to a time when everything seemed simpler. When wrestling was magic, not business. When the good guy won. And the cheers meant everything. That's what Hogan had that few ever touched again. It wasn't just the roar of the crowd, it was the purity of it. The way people believed. He made children feel brave. He made parents feel young again. He made fans believe that good really could triumph over evil. And while that sounds cliché now, during the height of the Cold War, during economic turbulence and national anxiety, Hulk Hogan was a cultural bomb. He wasn't just an escape, he was a response. His impact went beyond the ring. He was the first wrestler to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He starred in movies like No Holds Barred, guested on talk shows, became an action figure, a video game character, a lunchbox, a Halloween costume. He was the reason advertisers suddenly saw wrestling as something to take seriously. Because Hulk Hogan sold hope. And hope sells. In the locker room, several veterans stood quietly, replaying memories. Randy Orton leaned against a bench, staring into space. "We all owe him," he muttered to no one in particular. "All of us. Whether we admit it or not." Cody Rhodes sat lacing up his boots, pausing mid-loop. "He and my dad, they were the show," he said. "They made us want this life." But Roman? Roman wasn't speaking. He didn't need to. Because for him, this was more than the death of a childhood hero. It was the death of the era that birthed him back in the 1980s, when WrestleMania was just a gamble and cable television was still learning its power. Hulk Hogan was the bet Vince McMahon placed everything on. The WWF, now WWE, was still regional, still clawing for relevance beyond the Northeast. But Hogan had what others didn't reach. When he spoke, even non-wrestling fans listened. That booming voice, that infectious charisma, that massive frame that made even giants look small, it all screamed star power. He transcended. Wrestling wasn't enough to hold him. He became pop culture, and that, more than anything, is what every WWE superstar since has been chasing. That crossover magic. That mainstream reverence. That Hogan-level mythology. But no matter how high they fly, most fall short. Because Hogan wasn't just the first. He was the right man in the right era, with the right hunger, the right mania. Roman Reigns, for all his dominance, knew that. That's why he admired him. Because Hogan showed what was possible, not just as a performer, but as a symbol. He taught an entire generation how to command space, how to own a moment. He taught Roman that charisma wasn't volume, it was gravity, and now, with Hogan gone, Roman found himself standing at a crossroads. He wasn't just mourning. He was inheriting. WWE made the official announcement the morning after Hogan's passing. A 10-bell salute would open every show for the next week. A commemorative video package would air at SummerSlam. A statue would be commissioned for WWE headquarters. But the fans? The fans didn't need any of that to start mourning. They already had on social media, hashtags like #ThankYouHogan and #ImmortalForever were trending globally. Old footage of Hogan slamming Andre, cutting promos on Mean Gene, even starring in Thunder in Paradise, it flooded timelines like a wave of collective memory. For once, the internet wasn't arguing. It was remembering. There were debates, of course, there always are. Some pointed out Hogan's controversies. His past. The moments where the man behind the mustache let the world down. But even those critics couldn't deny the impact. The truth, because wrestling, in its core, isn't about perfection. It's about mythology. And Hogan's myth was woven into every ring rope, every Titantron entrance, every child in the crowd wearing a replica belt. Without him, the business isn't what it is. Without him, Roman Reigns doesn't become the tribal chief. Without him, millions don't believe in the power of being larger than life. Backstage, Paul Heyman approached Roman. He was the first, Heyman said. The first one who made people care everywhere. And now you're the one carrying it. You always were. Roman didn't reply. He just nodded. Because he knew. The mantle wasn't just his now. It always had been. But now, without the shadow of Hogan watching from the sidelines, that mantle felt lonelier. Triple H called a meeting at the Performance Center a few days later. Not a corporate one. A family one. No suits. No memos. Just the roster. He stood before them, voice quiet but firm. Look around. We're all here because of one man. Before The Rock, before Austin, before The Attitude, there was Hogan. He built the house. The rest of us just lived in it. And now, it's ours to maintain. Some cried. Some smiled. Some clenched their fists with new purpose. Roman stepped up next, not to speak, but to lead. He stood in the center of the room, raised 3 fingers to his chest, then slowly to the sky. And the locker room followed. Not a salute. A symbol. Brotherhood. Heritage. Loyalty. To Hogan. To what he gave them. That night, WWE quietly added Hogan's signature belt, a classic winged eagle, to the entrance set. No spotlight. No announcement. Just there. Watching over. At the end of SmackDown, Roman Reigns appeared once more. He wasn't dressed to wrestle. He wasn't flanked by the bloodline. He walked alone, suit pressed, eyes heavy. He looked into the camera and said, "This is the end of an era. But not the end of the story. You showed us how to be heroes. Now we carry that forward. Rest easy, big brother. We got it from here." He looked up to the rafters, to where an old Hulkamania bandana had been tied to the lighting rig, and he whispered one last time, "Whatcha gonna do, when your legacy lives on in all of us?" The days that followed Hulk Hogan's passing were unlike anything the wrestling world had seen in decades. Tribute poured in from every corner of the globe, from die-hard fans who watched his rise in smoky arenas to young kids who only knew his name from highlight reels but felt the weight of the moment all the same. The death of Hogan wasn't just a news story. It was a generational rupture. Like the earth itself had shifted, and the wrestling ring would never feel quite the same beneath our feet. Fans across the world held candlelight vigils in his memory. In Tampa, where his journey began, the sidewalk outside Hogan's beach shop became a shrine. Fans placed red and yellow flowers, photos, replica belts, and handwritten notes at the entrance. One message simply read, "Thank you for making me believe I was strong enough." That was Hogan's real legacy, not just championships, but belief. It was that belief that fueled an entire industry. Without Hulk Hogan, professional wrestling might have remained a niche form of regional entertainment. Instead, it exploded into a billion-dollar empire. Hogan was the first wrestler who made the jump from athlete to icon. Before The Rock had Hollywood. Before Cena became a meme. Before Roman Reigns ruled with silence. There was Hogan, screaming, flexing, posing, and electrifying millions long before Twitter hashtags and pyro. When Vince McMahon took the risk of launching the very first WrestleMania in 1985, it was Hogan who carried it. He didn't just headline the show, he was the show. Paired with Mr. T, backed by pop culture icons like Cyndi Lauper and Muhammad Ali, Hogan blurred the line between wrestling and the mainstream. That night at Madison Square Garden didn't just save WWE. It created the blueprint for everything to come. Roman Reigns knew this better than anyone. As WWE prepared to celebrate the life of Hulk Hogan with a week-long tribute across all platforms, Roman took it upon himself to meet with the production team personally. He didn't want a montage. He wanted a memorial. Something that captured not just the spectacle, but the spirit. Show the struggle, he told the editors. Show him sweating, falling, getting back up. Show him bleeding. Show him failing. That's the part that made him real. That's what made him a hero. And so they did. The tribute began with black and white footage of a young Terry Bollea, barefoot on a Florida beach, guitar in hand, dreaming of stadiums he hadn't yet imagined. Then came the transformation, the mustache, the tights, the entrance music that felt like an adrenaline shot. Real American played behind clips of body slams, crowd roars, children screaming from the rafters. Then came the turning points, the Andre Slam. The match with The Rock at WrestleMania X8. The heel turn that birthed the NWO and changed the industry again. Every era, every evolution, every contradiction, it was all there. Because Hogan was never just one thing. He was everything. A hero. A villain. A fighter. A flaw. A force. And in that montage, Roman Reigns appeared, voice over slow-motion footage of Hogan walking down the ramp. Some men wrestle for glory. Some wrestle for money. But legends? Legends wrestle for forever. WWE aired that tribute on every show that week: Raw, NXT, SmackDown. Even international broadcasts included it. Because this wasn't about brand loyalty. This was about legacy. AEW's Tony Khan even tweeted, regardless of company lines, "There is no wrestling world without Hulk Hogan. Rest in power, legend." In interviews following the tribute, Roman became more open about what Hogan meant to him. "When I was a kid," he said on the Pat McAfee show, "I used to stand on my uncle's couch with a pillow wrapped around my waist like a belt and scream, 'Whatcha gonna do, brother?' until someone made me shut up. He was my first favorite. And honestly, he's still the reason I know what this business can be when it's done right."